Just like the sine function, a is the amplitude of the function, and b is the number of cycles in the interval from 0 to 2 pi. So if you're trying to find the period is still 2 pi over b. So if you're just graphing cosine, think of the unit circle. And cosine is the x value. So this ordered pair is 1, 0, 0, 1, negative 1, 0, 0, negative 1. So if I make my axis, my vertical axis right here, and I go up by pi over 2, so this is pi, this is 3 pi over 2, this is 2 pi, I can keep going. What happens is, I'm going up to 1 and down to negative 1. I'm just graphing the regular cosine function. So the cosine of 0 degrees, or 0 pi, is 1, because that's the x value. So cosine of x is going to start up. And the cosine of pi over 2, the x value is 0. The cosine of pi, which is 180 degrees, the x value is negative 1. So this time, instead of the sine function starting at 0 and going max 0, min 0, this starts at 1 and goes 1, or max 0, min 0, back up to the max 0, min, and so forth, and on the other side too. So it looks similar than the sine function, it's just shifted over pi over 2, or 90 degrees. So down here, you can see the similarities in that if I look at this part of the sine function, it's right here. So the sine function is just the cosine function shifted over pi over 2. So that's how they're similar. So the sine function, I think of, makes an S, and the cosine makes a fancy U. That's how I think of it. And so if you have to graph opposite sine of x, it's going to look like this. And then opposite is going to look like this for cosine. So if you put opposite symbols in front of them, or negatives. So to write an equation, what I want to do is use the form y equals a cosine of bx, where 2 pi divided by b equals a period. So first I can see on this function that that the amplitude looks like it's going, the minimum is -5 and it's going up to 5, so the amplitude is 5. And actually this is this is a cosine function that is reflected, because normally cosine would start up here, but it's starting down here. So this is going to be y equals -5 cosine. And now I have to figure out my b. So the period is going from here to here, so that's 2 pi. So I'm going to write 2 pi divided by b equals a period, which is 2 pi. So b has to be 1. So that means that this function is -5 cosine of 1x, or x. So I still have to find my a and b just like I do the sine function. So here my amplitude is 4. And then it's 2 pi divided by b equals a period. And my period is looking like from here to here. So period is pi units. So this means that 2 pi over b equals pi. So if I solve both sides, multiply both sides by b, and divide by pi, I'll get b equals 2. So my function is going to be, and this one's not reflected at all, it's cosine at starting high, or up, so it's 4 cosine of 2x. And then number 19, first we're going to find our amplitude is 3. And then to find b, we're going to do 2 pi divided by b equals the period. So the period is going between 0 to pi over 2. So I write pi over 2. Now I'm going to solve for b. So b goes over here, and then I'm going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal of pi over 2, which is 2 over pi, and these two pi's cancel out, so b equals 4. So there's 4 cycles in here between 0 and 2 pi, which you can see there's 4 cycles. One right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So my function is going to be y equals positive 3, because this is starting up, cosine of 4x. Find the period amplitude of each cosine function and identify where the max, min, and zeros occur at, from 0 to 2 pi. So the period of this cosine function, this is actually a negative cosine function because it's starting down. So the period is 2 pi. The amplitude is 1. And then I'm just going to point out where the maximum, here are the maximum values. Here are the minimum values. And then the zeros are where the x-intercepts are. So I know you just had to do it from 0 to 2 pi, but I'm just showing you all the zeros on this function. And then over here, the amplitude is 4. The period is repeating itself every pi units. And the maximum values are right here. The maximum values are the y values. So the maximums are at 4 and negative 4. And the 4, and the minimums are at negative 4. And then here are all the x-intercepts, or zeros. And then 22, the period is repeating itself from it's 2 pi. The amplitude is 5. And here are the minimum values. Here are the maximum values. And these are the zeros, or the x-intercepts. Okay, write a cosine function. So I don't have to graph it, but just write I'll graph below, but write a cosine function. So I'm going to use y equals a cosine of bx, where 2 pi divided by b equals a period. So I know that I have y equals 2. I think this should be a 2, not a 2 pi. And the period's 1. So I'm going to plug in 1 for p. So this means that b, if I multiply both sides by b is equal to 2 pi. So my function is going to be y equals 2 cosine of 2 pi x. And then amplitude is 1/2. So y equals 1/2 cosine. And then I'm going to do 2 pi divided by b equals pi. So what does pi have to be? Multiply both sides by b. Divide both sides by pi. This is gone, this is gone, this is gone, this is gone. B equals 2, so it's 2x. And then down here, we're going to graph them like we did our sine function. So what I do is I mark off the amplitude. So the amplitude, this is a negative 2. So this means that it's going to start down. Usually the cosine function would start maximum, but this time it's going to start down, so I'm going to put a red dot for that. And then I'm going to figure out my period. So it's 2 pi divided by b, which is 2, equals a period. So my period's pi. So then I mark off pi units. I'm going to go up by, I'll go up by 2s. 1, 2, 3, 4. So write 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to let this be pi, and I'm going to cut pi into fourths. So this is going to be pi over 2, this is going to be pi over 4, and this is going to be 3 pi over 2. I always try to mix my cycles up into fourths. So now what I do is the cosine, and this is an opposite, is going to start down. So it's going to be minimum, 0, maximum, 0, minimum. And I make it look like a curve like this. And I can keep following that pattern too. And for the next one, the amplitude is 3. So I go up 3, and it's not negative. So 3, negative 3, it's starting up. And then I'm going to set B is 4. So I'm going to do 2 pi divided by 4 equals a period. So the period is 1/2 pi, or pi over 2. So then I mark off pi over 2. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4. This is going to be pi over 2. Half of pi over 2 is pi over 4. So then when I do a cosine function, this is going to start high. So it's going to be max, 0, min, 0, max. And then this problem over here, the A is 1, so the amplitude's 1. So I'll go up, this is 1, this is negative 1. It's not reflected at all because this number is positive. So then I'm going to do, this is 1/2, so 2 pi divided by, excuse me, 1/2 equals the period. So 2 divided by 1/2 is 4, because there's 4 halves in 2. So it's 4, the period's 4 pi. So I'm going to go 1, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi. And then I'm going to split my cycle split up into 4 spots. Cosine starts up. So I'm going to go up, 0, min, 0, back up to max again. 0, keep going. And then when you find all solutions right here, what you're going to do is you put this in y1 and you put this in y2. So you're going to have a graph. Your y2 is negative 2. So you're going to have a line, a horizontal line, and then you're going to have a function that is going to look something like this on your graphing calculator. And what you have to do is find the intersection between from 0 to 2 pi. So start at any time between 0 and 2 pi where these cross, and those are the solutions on your calculator. So on your calculator you do second, trace, and then you're going to do the intersect. And it's going to ask you for first curve, second curve. So that's how you do this one too. So you put in your y1, negative 2 cosine x, and then you put in your y2, 1.2, and you want to see where this curve crosses this line. Same thing with this. In the function y equals negative 2x over 3. When does the value of x equal 1? So if you substitute 1 in for y, you have this function. What you're going to do is you're going to put this in your y1, and then you're going to put this function in your y2 and see where they cross. So it can cross multiple times, or it might not cross at all.